I think watching you lead the Springboks and the Sharks, and reading your book, it was interesting. You said just to make one specific point, you spoke about the culture within the Springboks at one point being, as a new person coming in, there was this like initiation type vibe, and how younger people, and just so you know, reading your book and understanding that process, how coming from South Africa for me too, it was when you were the lighty or the young person in the group, you got carrying the bags and you were doing all the bits and pieces, and that was fine. But there was a line; those same people had to perform with you on the field. And I remember reading your book and thinking of my team. So thinking of new team members coming in. Your new team members, yes, they may be learning, they may be doing, but they're still serving. They still have to perform on the team. They still have to do the business for you. So I wonder if I could ask you a direct question or a specific question around that. How did you slowly change that culture from that, when you came in, you were kind of nothing, started to lower, don't speak, only speak when spoken to including those people?
Ryan, it was a tricky transition. It was a decision that I made in my first week as a Springbok. I was 22 years old, and I shared a room with a guy called David Barry. We made our debuts together, a beautiful human being. And we were so excited about being there and talking about whether this would be like, if we would get on the field and how long it would last. And a lot of that excitement was diminished by the way we were treated by our heroes. In that group was the likes of Joost and Ollie Leroux and Corne Krige and Bob Skinstad and Mark Andrews. And the list of World Cup winners that just carried on. But you sort of would enter a room and you'd sit down at a table and feel hell of uncomfortable, and eventually realize that your table is sort of in the back left corner. You don't really get to mingle with a guy that's got 50 caps. And I was expecting, because I was a sponge. I'd sit until the last person left as a youngster. I just wanted to hear stories and see how people interacted with each other and learn. And I got none of that. In fact, there were very few of those senior guys that actually took me under their wing. Maybe maybe a guy like Robbie Kempson, who actually wasn't one of the stalwarts or the high profile guys, but he sort of took me under his wing and he was firm with me, but he at least mentored me and gave me a bit of instruction and guided me on a pathway that would help me grow. And so we sat after a few nights and we were like, this isn't quite what we expected. And we vowed there that if we ever did get to play 30, 40, 50 tests, that we would change the culture, which is super easy to make when you're 22. You fast track 5 years down the line and that guy, you've got 50 caps and you're captaining South Africa and you're responsible for an environment that is extremely diverse. And it's to explain to people that don't understand South Africans is we've got so many differences and cultures and languages and colors and beliefs. But I tell you what, at the top of that list is provincialism between guys that play for the Bulls or the Sharks or the Stormers and the Lions. It's just, it's difficult to get them to integrate. When I was there at 22, I wasn't going to be the change. No one would have listened to me. Change comes from the leadership, from the high profile Springboks, from the guys that have got 30, 40, 50 caps. So I went to the Victors and the Jean de Villiers and the Skalkbergers and the Bucky Sporters, and I said, you know what? It's probably pretty cool to sit with the same guys that you play with provincially and talk about the same things that you enjoy, because birds of a feather do flock together, but it's going to have absolutely no value to create a culture that is unique to the Springbok team. And if we don't create a Springbok culture where we actually all feel like we are family and teammates, it will never, ever really succeed properly. And it doesn't mean you betraying being a bull or a shark or a lion. When we started doing this and the senior guys started putting themselves out there and creating a culture of, let's see, where did this guy go to school? Like, did he study further? What are his hobbies? Does he have kids? All these little things become big things when the big moments arrive, when you're 5 minutes from the line and you actually understand like what this guy next to you is about. And he just doesn't have the same jersey as you. You actually, his background, his culture, his upbringing, and who he loves, what he loves. And so that took a while. And when it started to take shape, it was like wildfire. And we created a culture within the Springboks that made guys look forward to getting together with South Africa over and above what they would have with their clubs, their franchises. And look, I'll tell you the one thing, and throughout this process, which was it's not, okay, I'm successful. encompassing everyone is an ongoing process. It's a daily process. And the other thing about it is that there's a fine line between everybody loves everybody and there's no actual like accountability.
Yeah.
There has to be the 50 cap guy. There has to be the captain that says, you know, that's not good enough, or we're going to go in this direction. At some stage, there's got to be those things, but there has to be a respect for everyone in the food chain that makes up this team. And I think we got that right, but I promise you, it was an ongoing process and it required effort all the time, because you can very easily just lull back into these easy habits when things are difficult. And things get difficult in a team environment when you're losing. In business, it's when you're not getting budget or you're not making enough, PBT. So for us, the hardest we had to work at our culture was when we were a game down, 2 games down, 3 games down. And then the old adage of, when you start pointing fingers, there's always 3 or 4 pointing back at you. That became extremely important in our culture, because we're such a high profile organization that if someone comes to you and says, what's the problem? Is the coach? And you sort of think you might be the problem. It's really easy to point a finger at the coach. But we made a culture of all the senior guys take the responsibility all the time. And even if it's not our fault, and when it's private time and it's team room, then we address where we think the problems are in private. We deal with them in a fair way without abusing people. But our leadership always took responsibility.